Hey everybody, getting ready to do SAT Math Level 1 Prep Schedule Plan or Syllabus, and let's go through it now for Click Math. And let's go through our RSVP to Animated PowerPoint Math video at AOL.com for limited seating for online classes if you're taking it online, or for a free diagnostic test. Email me here to schedule that, either on Scribbler or on Explain Everything. Those are available. Email me here for an appointment. And let's go right into our first page here of our syllabus. We start out here with a diagnostic test number 4, which would take about half an hour, 25 minutes. And then session 1, we start in here with classwork lessons here, getting acquainted with the Math SAT. Then we go over multiple choice questions, grading questions, how that works, and then SAT preparations strategy of 1 and 2, strategy 1 and 2. So there's important test taking strategies that this course will go over. There's strategies 3 through 5, 6 through 7, and then strategy 8. This is all covered on session 1. Should be about a 2-hour session. If you do it at home, you can do this in about 2 hours, or at your own pace if you wish. And then for session 2, we start out with strategy 9, 12, and 14. And strategy continue through strategy 20 on your second session, second 2-hour session. And then for session number 3, we get into some work now. We have what are called classwork parts of it. SVPLs are classwork students, and you'd see that in your booklet that you get as well with the course. And then we have what are called tune-ups or homeworks that practice certain aspects of algebra, which will be on your SAT Math Level 1. And so this is study session number 3. This will be 2 hours, or you can take longer if you wish. If you're taking it at home, these can be available online as well. You need to contact me for that option. And so anyway, 2 hours here for session 3. And then session 4, we start out here with systems of equations. SVPO again, or classworks, or their learning practice PowerPoints. This is your PowerPoint and/or video version as well. Then you have tune-ups that go with each one of these topics here. And then going into our next session before session 4, we have another diagnostic test here, a half-hour diagnostic test to see how you're coming along. And that's available either within your own click card, or you can take it online as well if you schedule an appointment. And going in here to our next session 4, we cover algebraic inequalities, absolute value equations, and then graphing in the XY plane with tune-ups or homeworks for session 4, 1 hour here. And then session 5, we have graphing linear systems, working with functions, working with percent, and then ratio and variation for session 5. And then going in here to session 5, we cover rate problems, converting units of measure with tune-ups as well. And then session 6, we get into linear exponential functions, graphs and tables. And then we have another test session here, practice test 1, part 1, test session number 3, which would be a half an hour for that. And then session 7 here, we cover scatter plots and sampling, summarizing data using statistics, and then rational exponents, and then more advanced algebraic concepts, 5.2. This will be your 7th session here. And going in now to session 8 is a 1 hour. Session 9 is 2 hour for session 9. Session 8 is complex numbers, completing the square, the parabola. And then we have a practice test after that, which is a 1 hour practice test, which would be using a calculator for this practice test here. And then we go into session 9, which is a 2 hour session here, reflecting and translating function graphs, reviewing basic geometry facts, and then area of plane figures, circles and their equations, part 1 and part 2. And then going into 6.4 to be solid figures, 2 hours for this session here. And finally finishing up here with session 10 with basic trigonometry and then the unit circle. We cover trig here. And then here again is our test scheduling here, which we'll go over. Test session number 5 is 1/2 hour, practice test number 2. And then test session number 6 is a 1 hour test, which is using a calculator. Practice 2, part 2, practice test 2, part 2. This 1/2 hours without a calculator. And then up here, session 4, let's don't forget that. Session 4 is practice test 1, part 2, which is 1 hour test with a calculator, graphing calculator for part 2, test 1. And going down further, and that is your syllabus for SAT Math Level 1 preparation. Animated PowerPoint math video at AOL.com for questions or course materials. Thank you very much. And then going in here to session 1 of your click card, let's go over your click cards real quickly here, students. You have a diagnostic test here, number 4. This will take 1/2 hour. This will be your first test that you should take. And that is on session 1. Then we go into session 2 here. We cover 2.1 SAT preparation strategies 9 through 20 on your session 2. And this will be your pages on your workbook that you will fill out by doing these PowerPoints. And this is your PowerPoint edition. There is a video version as well if you want that. And anyway, so this is session 2 here, 2 hours for session 2. And then we go into session 3 here, 2 hours, PowerPoint edition here as well. And we start out with 3.1 SAT Math, some beginning math facts through 3.3 equations, more than one variable, so multivariable equations for 3.3. And then we have your corrections for your tune-up exercises here. Your corrections will be here in PowerPoint. And this is session 3. This will be 2 hours here as well. And for this PowerPoint edition, you just roll it over with your cursor on your PC or your Apple box or your Droid. You just click and you go. Your PowerPoint will come up. And this is session 3, 2 hours. And then we go to session 3A. With 3A is a large session here. We continue 3.3 equations, more than one variable, through 3.7 systems of equations. And then these are your corrections for your tune-ups or homeworks or tune-up exercises that will get you ready for your SAT. And so anyway, 2 hours here for session 3A. This is still your session 3. And then going on here into session 4, and we pick it up here with 3.8 algebraic inequalities, and we finish here at 3.10 which is graphing in the XY plane, and you have you have tune-up exercises in here, and then you have a diagnostic test number 10, which is your second diagnostic test that you shall take. And from that score on that, you can maybe get other lessons. If you're weak in geometry or in other parts of algebra, you can prop that up with other lessons that I can provide you. And you need to contact me if you feel like you have a certain deficit in your algebra proficiency. So anyway, session 4, 2 hours here. And again, these are your URLs for your PowerPoints. There are video versions as well. And contact me if you want video and PowerPoint. You can, most students take both because they're more, the video is more quicker and faster, and you can use it more as a review before you actually take your SAT. So the PowerPoint's more of a classroom kind of aid, whereas the video is more of a review kind of media. And let us go into session 5. Let's go to session 5. Session 5, 2 hours here. We continue with graphing linear systems and 3.11. Here's your part 1, part 2 of your tune-ups for 3.11. 3.12 is working with functions, and then we go on to 4.1, working with percent. Part 1, part 2, and then we have a 4.1 tune-up, which will have corrections for that as well. 2 hours here for session 5. Again, these are all PowerPoint URLs. And let's go into our continuation here in session 5. We go 4.2 ratio and variation, part 2. And you have a tune-up for that as well. Rate problems, and then converting units of measures, using conversion tables and expressions for that as well. Conversion equations. And so you have 2 hours here for session 5. Here is your these are your pages for your workbook that you'll get when you get the course. So it's quite a course, but you can go quickly because of the PowerPoint and video aids that you'll get. 2 hours here for session 5. And going in here to session 6, linear and exponential functions, graphs and tables. And then here's your corrections over here for that. Then we have a practice test 1, no calculator here for this part, which is a half an hour. For our SAT 1 practice test is no calculator, 30 minutes for that. And again, PowerPoint edition here, 1/2 hour for our test session number 3. And then going in here to session 7, scatter plots and sampling, and summarizing data using statistics, and then summarizing data, 4.8. 5.1 will be rational exponents, more advanced algebraic concepts, 5.2, and then you have tune-ups for those, and then these are your corrections for your tune-ups, so you can pace yourself here if you're doing it at your own pace. You can use these corrections to judge your own progress here. And tutoring is available. Contact me if you think you need tutoring or you need other lessons to prop up your skills here. I can provide those. Session 7, 2 hours here. And going in here, we are into session 8, completing the square, and then completing the square tune-ups. And then we have homework over here, 5.3, complex numbers, 5.3, cover that as well. And then 5.5, the parabolas. We get into going over parabolas and quadratics. And then we have test session number 4 here, practice test 1, part 2. Which is a calculator part of this practice test, which you should be up to snuff with your TI-84, TI-83, and this is 1 hour for this test session number 4. And then going into finishing up here, session 8, we have a test, practice test 2, part 2A, calculator corrections. So again, we go over that, and you get your corrections here from the test that you can take at home, or you can arrange to have it proctored by me online, which is available as well. It's a 1 hour test. You should get used to taking a test. And then we go to session 9, reflecting and translating function graphs, and then we have a tune-up for that. And then reviewing, go into geometry here with 6.1. And then reviewing basic geometry facts, area of plane figures, tune-up area of plane figures, and then circles and their equations as well. And there's tune-ups for those as well. And so this will be session 9, which is crucial because we jump into geometry here. If you think you need review for geometry, I can provide quarters of work with geometry if you feel like you need reviewing on that. And then we go into, again, picking up session 9 here. This is 9A. We continue into session 9 here with area of plane figures, tune-up area of plane figures, and circles and their equations as well. So I cover that heavily here in session 9. Is important for geometry part of it. And then you have corrections over here. And then going into session 10, we get into trigonometry here for session 10. Basic trigonometry, and we go into unit circle, and then we have a homework here for the unit circle, and here's your corrections for that. And then 6.5, basics of trigonometry, which you need to know. And if you need to brush up on trigonometry, I can provide lessons for those as well. And then we have practice test 1, which is a 1 hour, part 2, which is a calculator test for practice test 1. Practice test 2, part 1, which is a non-calculator part of it, which is a half an hour. And then practice test 2, part 2, which is a calculator test as well. So you can get in your TI-83 or 84 practice with this test. And then we go in, there's furthermore an extension here of session 10. We go into practice test 1, part 2, which is calculator. Again, we go over the same thing which we did prior. Here's your corrections for practice test 1, part 2, no calc, which is half-hour tests, and then practice test 1, part 2A, and we go into your calculator corrections here. And then practice test 2, part 1A, no calc, practice test 2, part 1, which is no calc, then part 2 are all calculator. Parts of the test which you need to know how to use TI-83 and TI-84. If you need to have lessons on that, I can provide those as well. Session 10 is 2 hours here as well for basic trig, and then the unit circle. Those will definitely be on your SAT level 1 and level 2. So those are your URLs that you'll get on your click card. And again, practice test 2, part 1, which is your no calc part, and then practice test 2, part 2, which is your calculator part of test 2, which is calculator. So that is your SAT Math Level 1 prep animated PowerPoint math video at AOL.com for questions or course materials. Thank you very much.